Hello, everybody, and welcome to Role-Playing in World of Warcraft, a crash course for 2024 by Mana. This will star my character Monano here, who is the inspiration for my little avatar. I've role-played her for about 10 years, so I have good experience. I've been on Moonguard and I've been on Wyrmrest Accord. I am currently on Moonguard because I like Alliance roleplay, and that is where you want to go for that. Today I'm going to be covering a crash course in roleplay. This video will cover the basics of roleplay, etiquette and red flags, popular add-ons, how to use said add-ons, making a character using TRP, the process of roleplaying, examples of roleplay, larger events, basic networking, and how to use some of the more niche add-ons. Keep in mind what you're about to get into is a niche interest within a niche game. World of Warcraft is big, but it is still not something that everybody engages with. It is considered nerdy. You are doing something nerdy within an already nerdy game. Roleplay is very versatile. There is no one-stop shop or a hard set rule for what is allowed and what isn't. However, there are certain social norms that I will be covering so that you are aware of them, so that you don't put your foot in your mouth. Everything I say in this video, you could technically argue to some extent. You could say, well, I prefer to do it this way, and so on. But the point of this video is going to be quick. So we're not going to entertain that. We're doing this for beginners. If you would like more in-depth videos, if you have questions, if you have things you would like me to add as potential options, I am, of course, welcome to commentary about that. Whether or not I'll make a whole other video about it is a different story. Anyways, let's begin. First, if you want to do Alliance-themed roleplay, then I would go Moonguard. If you want to do Horde-based roleplay, I would go Wyrmrest Accord. Next, the basics. 1. Terminology. IC stands for in character. That's when you're playing as your character. All of your actions, your movements will be something that other people can comment as if you are doing as your character. OOC stands for out of character. That's usually when you're messing around, doing PvE, talking as yourself, doing what I'm doing, which is just jumping around aimlessly. These are out of character things. I am not doing them as my character. ERP. You might see this. This stands for erotic roleplay. Erotic roleplay is exactly what it sounds like. It is the sexy times between two characters. It is people doing like romance. It is people doing more mature things together. So you can fill in the blanks for that. So yes, you might see people, who try to engage in that, or people who say they don't want to engage in that. Something important to be aware of. Definitely something you should keep private, so party chats, whispers, so that public channels do not have to see your fetishes. Venue, another term. A venue is a location or area, usually for an event or a story. It's where something is going to be hosted at. So if someone says the venue is in this location, go there. They might write it as if it's not actually there. Just go with the flow and you'll understand. DNI, that means do not initiate. Usually you'll see this in people's profiles when you have the TRP add-on, which you should get. And if someone has DNI, that usually means do not initiate, and then they'll have a qualifier afterwards, like DNI minors. That means they do not want minors, people under the age of 18, interacting with that character. They may have DNI, male Worgen. That means they don't want male Worgen interacting with that character. Some of these things can be red flags to some when they see the DNI tag. They might assume, oh, well, if this person doesn't want to RP with minors, maybe all they're after is ERP. But in truth, this could be for other reasons. Perhaps they don't like more naive writers. Perhaps they don't like people who are very young and don't have much life experience. Now, I want to note my TRP does not have these qualifiers because, I don't feel the need to do that. And I'm not really doing crazy RP with people randomly. But there are many reasons for this that are justifiable. So even as someone who does not use those tags, let's try not to judge people too harshly if they do. Next, RP itself just stands for roleplay. DM/ST or host is usually an event runner who makes up scenarios for more adventure-focused events. They might play other characters in the story. They might use raid markers or objects to stand for these characters, or may just describe them. They are like your dungeon master in D&D. People have to opt in, of course, to follow someone who's telling a story, but that's usually what those terms mean. Point 2. There are various types of role players. You might see people who identify as multi/para hosters. These are people who will write a lot of words, usually multiple paragraphs, and they tend to use flowery prose. They're usually very descriptive, and they usually take a whole slew of actions in one response. Now, there are benefits to this. I would say it's best used if you're doing, a combat role play and you're pre-writing your action to make it cool, or it's great between two characters who are maybe doing romance or just doing a planned thing together, then it's fine. I would say it's not recommended in public settings, as it floods up chat boxes, and it also makes it very hard to reply to you, as it tends to require a degree of interlacing responses. What I mean by that is take your two hands, open your fingers, interlace your fingers, and your writing ends up like that, where someone puts out a block of text and you have to sort of fit your responses between their various blocks of text, and it gets very annoying to write for. Not so fun if you're in public. Standard roleplay just usually means you do one speech thing and one action. So you might say like, hello, how are you? And then, take an action like I adjust my vest, or I put my hand out to shake your hand. These things are simple. It's usually about a sentence or two for standard roleplay. It's a lot faster to reply to. Most people will take about 3 minutes max to respond in this style. Whereas with paragraphs, it could be, 15 minutes if you're unlucky. Adaptive, when people identify themselves as adaptive role players, it means they will adjust based on their, RP partners. So if you start doing tons of paragraphs, they will. If you write quick responses, they will. Probably what most people should aim for. Try to be adaptive, but of course, consider your audience and consider the setting you are in. That is important for roleplay. Point number 3. You play as a character you make up with any job you can think of in the world. You could be an adventurer, but keep in mind, what you do in game is not what your character can. So even though I can go off and one-shot the Lich King with my one punch, it doesn't mean that I'm strong enough to one-shot anybody who is weaker than the Lich King, let's say, in lore. What you can do in game is not the same as what happens in roleplay. You could also pick jobs like being a baker, or make a combination like a magic rogue. Just keep in mind, try not to be overpowered, try to be fair, try to have weaknesses. This is good stuff to keep in mind if you're a beginner, because some people try to make themselves too powerful. To RP, you basically just talk as normal. Do you know your actions using emotes? So for example, if I want to do an emote, let's do a really easy one just so people can see one, because that's probably important. We might write /E, which makes it into an emote action, holds a book, and says, and then if I want to write something, I always put in quotes, what a nice book. Now, when you look at this dialogue, I'm going to put it in the center of the screen here with this little RP add-on I have. You can see that in orange is my action and in white is my text. I can rotate this around. If I want to say something first, I can say in say chat, I can write in quotes, what a nice book. And then put asterisks for emotes that say Mana holds a book close to her. Now, when I do this, let's see how this comes out as an output. Now you can see it comes out as a text bubble, but in my dialog box, I again have that correct color coordination where I have in white my chat, in orange my action. This is pretty helpful for just quick reading for people, and I think it is implemented by TRP. It might be just natural to WoW itself, but I haven't not used TRP for a long time, so I might be wrong. But it does help to have that, and it makes things a lot more readable. So again, if you want to write things with text, you put them between quotes, as in things you're saying, and if you want them to be actions, you put them between asterisks. In general, that's the basic rule. Point number 5, give people time to respond. Not everyone is a fast typer. Some people are a little slower, some people are a little bit more, quick on the uptake. If you find yourself waiting longer than 7 minutes for short replies, just probably leave. Not to be rude, but you know, everyone has limited time. I personally don't really want to wait that long. For shorter things though, it's okay. I think 3 minutes is about average for even short replies, because remember, people have to think about what their character might say. They might give you substantial emotes, so it's worth it to give them a little time. Number 6, player agency is key. This means respecting the chance for things to go a different way. You are not the, god of roleplay. You cannot decide what other people's characters will do or if they're going to get hurt by yours. Even if your character is the most crazy, overpowered person in your mind, it does not mean someone else will not write their character as a step above you. So you have to try and give them an opportunity to react or escape, because sometimes they will try to do that. You are a bad role player if you write emotes like, let's say, John Switchblade stabs character 14 times before they can blink. Character falls over and starts to die. As I say, nothing personal, dweeb. This would be dog shit roleplay. Because one, I force an action on the character and I act like it happens. I try to say that before they can even blink it occurs. I don't consider that maybe this person can stop my character, John Switchblade, easily. Instead, if I wanted to write that down, I would follow something differently. I would say something like, John Switchblade thrusts his blade forward rapidly, aiming to stab character multiple times. If successful, he will smugly add, nothing personal, dweeb. This takes me to point number 7, where anything you do should be an attempt. Unless you know the character well, or it's something like a scene where, there is no real resistance they could offer. Like, let's say they're passed out on the floor. You gently, poke their cheek. Like, generally, you can write that out. You don't have to make every single thing you do an attempt. Some people overdo it, and they make everything like that. Just play it by ear and be sensible about it. If you're trying to enforce your will on someone, make it an attempt. Point number 8. Generally, most people will roll for their actions to succeed. So they will do a /roll20. That's the most common thing. And you can see I got a 4 here. So it's pretty easy to tell. People will be able to look at your rolls and they can determine whether or not you succeed or fail. Now, usually the rule is if it's a 10 or above, it's a success. If it's a 1, it's a critical fail. If it's below a 10, it just doesn't work. And if it's a 20, usually it's a critical hit or it's just a little extra effective. Obviously, you should be a little sensible. Like if someone says, I jumped to the moon and they roll a 20, that doesn't mean they probably can do that. So don't apply, what people accidentally do in even in Dungeons and Dragons, where they think a 20 means anything happens. It doesn't. But also just keep in mind, these are the general rules. If you're doing a like an event that someone is storytelling for you or DMing, and there are enemies that are harder to hit than a 10, that's probably reasonable. They're probably like a boss and they're trying to create some tension, even though I think that kind of event is boring. But you need to be aware of that. Now, if someone is just randomly fighting you and they're saying, oh, well, my character is just super badass, so if you want to hurt them, you have to roll past a 15. Oh, and if I roll under a 5, it still hits you, because that person sucks. Don't bother with it. They're just trying to power game. They just want to use you as a stepping stone. They are not there to provide you with a story. Do not provide them with engagement. Only engage with people who are clearly trying to add to your story. That is a recommendation, of course, but you will find yourself miserable if you try to appease people who are just trying to power game. Point number 9. Personally, again, personal point, fuck people who try to use you as a stepping stone in any way. So if they're trying to get with your character and they just want to only hog your character for, romance roleplay, fuck them. If they want to try and control your character and make them like their underling in their group and they're not providing you with a good story, fuck them. Usually most stories of woe and annoyance in RP stem from someone not saying fuck you to someone who deserved it. And I mean an OOC fuck you, because there are people who will try to make your roleplay experience miserable, and usually it involves stepping all over your character agency. So I'm highlighting that point because you as a beginner should be very aware that there are people who will try to take advantage of that. Just be careful. There are great role players, but always be on the safe side. I don't want your experience ruined because you're just too nice. Point number 10. Character death is rare. I recommend not letting your character be killed and not trying to kill other characters for at least probably a month of roleplay. Get used to how things go. Understand, what's going on, and understand that most people aren't out there to kill their characters because it's hard to make a character. It's hard to make one that's believable. So killing them just usually isn't worth it. Most of the time you get knocked out, or you get beat up, or you get taken in somewhere. Maybe you get like a lasting scar. Maybe you lose like a limb. These things can be recovered from, but try to give things their due, their due moments. So if you do get seriously injured, try not to pop right back up 5 seconds later because someone healed you. Some people will do roleplay like that. Others roleplay it as if healing is a slower process. These are just things you can decide for yourself. Personally, I find the world is a lot more interesting if wounds and such actually matter, but you can choose. Point number 11, most people are going to roleplay for story as opposed to power to exercise over others. Keep that in mind. That's usually the most accepted thing. 12, people can give themselves titles. For example, my title on this character is Private Investigator. Some people have a lot more on their title list. They might have something like, like Grand King, or, Duke, or, some more fanciful title like the Dragon of Stormwind or whatever. These things are things they choose to give themselves, and their power only extends as far as you're willing to make them go. So someone can tell me that they are, a knife in the dark, the sweet surrender, like this person has in their titles, right? And that is cool, but that does not mean I have to know them as that. It does not mean I have to respect their character as that. So if they're trying to come over to me and they try to pull rank based on some random title, I don't necessarily need to, believe that fully. My character can question it because anyone can tell you anything. This person says they're a former private first class of the 7th Legion. How do I really know that? I don't. So if they try to pull rank on me for some reason, I don't have to. Really, with any title, its power only goes as far as other people allow. So if someone wants to claim they're the king, sure, they can do that, but it doesn't mean that you have to accept it. Now, if you want to do a cool title, don't be deterred just because I'm saying people can question it. Most people won't if it's something small or like a cool nickname. But if you want to have rank, you need to earn it. And the way you earn it is by doing fun things. So if you claim you're the king and you walk around giving people some interesting role play, you might have a good time. And you might get people accepting you. Because if you do cool things and you make them feel like you're the king, and you make them want to role play with you, then that title starts to mean something. Obviously, I would still recommend not being something like the king, because that is a big title. But you can get something important like a mayor or something like that, and you could probably get something going. I mean, if you were to roleplay as the Duke of the Dwarven District, and you did really cool things, you set up events, you got people acting together in that zone, you brought life to it, then you're going to have actual, power base on it. You still shouldn't abuse it, but people will probably be willing to listen to you. They might know you as the Duke of the Dwarven District. So just keep that in mind. A little side note with titles. I recommend sticking with 1 or 2. When you have a lot of them, it can start to get a little silly. Here you see somebody with like 1, 2, 3, 4, and some of them are kind of like a little more ridiculous. It can get a little excessive, and for some people it can feel like a little like, okay, this character's kind of full of themselves. It depends. Obviously, I try not to judge too hard based on that, because I know some people just like lots of flowery titles, but it can be kind of messy to look at. Really, 1 or 2 titles is a lot. When you start having a whole paragraph of them, it starts to look a little concerning. Oh, and here is a nice example of a relatively normal post. This is like, a paragraph and a little bit more. That is not uncommon. Very acceptable standard roleplay. Okay. Number 13. There is random world RP and events. Events and world RP are different things usually. One is more planned and one is, random. When you're randomly walking up to somebody for world RP, it's like being in the city. You walk up to someone and you can say hello. Anybody I see around here, I could walk up to in character and say hello to, and it's generally pretty much okay. When there's an event, though, it might be a scheduled thing. There might be more people there specifically for that event. So I can still walk up and say hello, but I'm going to want to follow some of the basic rules to respect whoever's trying to run that event, because if there's a lot of people there, they're probably putting some thought and time into it. Don't make an event about you unless you're running the event, and that's the point. So in World RP, I can walk up and I can, you know, talk about myself. I can make it about me. I can do something dramatic, and that can be fun. But in an event, I probably shouldn't show up and, you know, like have a heart attack during someone's wedding, because I'm purposely doing that. It's different from real life where, you know, like let's say you have a heart attack during someone's wedding. In real life, no one's going to be like angry at you truly for that, because you didn't do that on purpose. But in RP, you are specifically doing whatever it is, obviously on purpose. So if you come in and try to make the event all about you, that kind of sucks. So just keep that in mind. You should respect what's going on. Don't make something and someone else's story about you if they're trying hard to tell something else, right? But if you're in World RP or you're running your own event, or it's like a closed, you know, it's an event where you're a participant and you're meant to be doing things, then obviously this changes a bit. Just keep this kind of in mind. Point number 14, you don't need all the add-ons in the world to play. I do really recommend TRP, as it does give you a sort of social proof that you are engaging in good faith. It's like saying, hey, yeah, I'm here to roleplay. Here's some stuff you can see. Also, people do cool things like I just saw right here. People can make, you know, their own websites and their own things that connect to the story and to the game. And for example, the Azeroth Times, they often do like little reports. You can click links and you can open those and you can see things that people are talking about, which is really cool. There are things going on in roleplay that go pretty far. You might have to reach out to people, but yeah, but that's a little side because that just came up naturally. Number 15, roleplay is collaborative, and that means you will need to give and take with any character you make. Number 16, roleplay is entirely opt-in. That means people can ignore your character if they feel you are not worth their time. So if you walk up to someone claiming you're a bastard child of Illidan and Jaina who's super powerful and you try to kill them, they're probably going to ignore you. Number 17, no roleplay is better than bad roleplay. That means it's better to have no roleplay at all than to have a bad experience. So just keep that in mind. Don't settle for terrible experiences. 18, no one can control you, no one should hurt you, and no one should pester you out of character. People generally should be cordial and friendly out of character. If they're not, then block them, ignore them, and don't roleplay with them. Number 19, you can RP if you are socially anxious or a character that is more reclusive, but it's going to be harder and you need to try and sort of angle things so that people will want to interact with you. So for example, you might have to do descriptive emotes, but be near people so they can see them. People will read them, whether they interact is up to them. 20, most people will not judge you harshly for lore errors and for not being as well-rounded as their long-term characters. Just try to keep things nice and calm. Most people just want to roleplay. They're not here to judge you or hate on you. If someone is trying to come at you too hard with corrections for every little thing, that can be a red flag. In some cases, if they're trying to help you with something though, you know, maybe open your mind. Maybe you are wrong about something, but in the end, you can decide what you want to do. Point 21, for more in-depth roleplay, you will want a community, a guild, or a social network. Random RP is fun in its own right. I actually really enjoy it. But really what I usually tend to do is I try to build a social network of really good people that I like, and then I interact with them for a while, and then slowly build my social profile some more, seeing if some people maybe turned out to not be as good as I thought, and I gather more people and try to do new things to keep things fresh. Taking breaks is also wise. Number 22, in-game accomplishments do not equal RP accomplishments. Yes, I might be an excellent PvPer, or yes, I'm a mythic raider. That does not mean that I am that strong in roleplay, because my character could be a baker with those accolades to their name in the game, and my baker should not be able to beat a death knight, right? So it's important to understand there is a division between the two things. Some people get them confused. Other important fact, a gun is not an instant kill. I know some people get this confused, but this is a world where people get shot with magic, get stabbed with swords, and survive pretty often. It is not a world where one single thing tends to kill you. So if you start to try to employ real world logic only on guns, you're doing some stupid stuff. A lot of people do that because for some reason they're like, oh, a gun, like that's always going to work exactly like I see in reality. Meanwhile, it's like, oh yeah, shrugging off sword stabs, that's normal. No, it's not. Usually those would kill you too. So just keep that in mind. There's not like really like an effective one-shot thing. Mostly though, you shouldn't really be focusing on trying to do that kind of thing and trying to like insta kill people, but some people do, and it's annoying enough for me to remark on it. Number 23, no one owes you roleplay, and you owe no one roleplay. Nobody has to engage with anybody. It's not a requirement. Number 24, if a scenario makes you uncomfortable, you are free to leave. Don't argue the point, but understanding this also means you have to understand, if you are, in a roleplay that you're leaving, you're probably not going to get back into that. Now that can be worth it. Sometimes it's not worth your time, but you're going to close that door. Now, harrowing scenes you didn't consent to, attempts to take your character agency away and maybe do like some sexual things. I've heard about this all. I've seen it all before. Definitely just leave those situations. People should let you know ahead of time if they're putting like deep and dark themes at you like that. And if you don't like it, don't accept it. Just leave. Just leave. So who cares if people who are willing to do that to you block you? They're not worth your time. There are better role players than that. And don't accept it just because like, oh, well, I was outnumbered. People can call their friends, and that's not really realistic, right? They could tell all their guild buddies or whisper a bunch of people like, here, come surround this person. That doesn't make it a good situation. People trying to use numbers and such to overpower your agency is not necessarily good. Unless you're like a villain in the city and like a bunch of people show up, that kind of makes sense because like there would be people around and they probably would try to stop you. That's a bit different. All right, moving on to our next point. That's the basic roleplay things. Now let's talk about etiquette and red flags. We are running low on time because I am taking a long time, but that's the way it goes. In general, people expect you to walk around when applicable. Think about how stupid you would look running around in a restaurant in real life. Keep that in mind. Basic etiquette. Make everything an attempt. Do not assume anything of anyone. They might want to date your character, but it doesn't mean you're the only date they might have or that they might be doing stuff with. Keep in mind, sometimes people are out to do things that you may not like. They might be running around with multiple partners. They might be doing all these kinds of things. That is their role play and their personal prerogative, right? You don't control them, and they're, some things might be out of character for them. So just understand that. Don't assume. Don't put too much stock into someone you don't know. You don't know where their head is at. You don't know if they get too attached to you out of character when you do like role play dating. There's a lot of stuff that can get in the way. So just keep this in mind. Do not make something about you without extreme consideration. So for example, like I mentioned before, someone's running an event. It's not your time to do an edgy villain attack, right? Coordinate, ask around, ask people if it's okay if you do certain things. Try to use decent structure in your sentences. Avoid typos as best you can. There are add-ons that can help. I will list those. Do not take too many actions per post. This is to allow people to react. This is most important when you're in group settings. Do not RP without a little whispering in an OOC direct message. So maybe whisper somebody if you want to do a fight. This is important because, well, it helps establish what's going to happen. Is this going to be a role battle? Are we going to assume that this is an emote battle where one person maybe just wins, but you just do some fun emotes for it? It's just generally important to understand what you're planning to do. It's okay to not engage with someone, but usually it's respectful to say, hey, I'm busy, I'm about to go do this, or hey, I was actually like not really in character, I left it on by mistake, like, pardon, I can't roleplay right now, if someone starts with you. If it's someone you just don't want to roleplay with, just be kind and make up a white lie, like, oh, sorry, I can't reply right now for whatever reason, right? You can do it. Try not to be doing 10 things at once and giving someone artificially slow replies. No one wants to wait 5 minutes for someone to say, oh, that's cool. That kind of sucks. And if you're not going to be present, don't bother. I think that's more of a personal viewpoint, but really just try to be cordial. Don't use character names unless you get them in character. Remember, what you see in a TRP does not necessarily mean what you know. Right? You don't know everyone's name just because you see like a name hovering over their head. Like you would have to walk up and talk to them to get it. So just try to keep it in mind. Personal recommendation, don't slap on 20 titles, 8 nicknames, and all your X accomplishments on your profile front and center. They can be in your summary, but if you make it all part of your your list of titles, it just looks a little gaudy. Again, that's my personal view. It oversaturates your character and it makes it harder for someone to understand what they are. Next. You cannot claim any area in the world as just yours. However, you might be the reason why people are showing up to roleplay there. Generally, people respect the fact that, well, if someone's running events and they have planned things going on, that's probably a space that they should allow you to work in. However, usually it's a first come, first serve basis. For scheduled events, try to be kind. Like if you're just trying to do some silly little RP there and there's this huge thing going on, maybe try not to take it over. Or if you're going to use it, just, try to add the event in as something going on in your own role, but it'll be more fun anyways. Try not to be good at everything. While it's fun to do sometimes to be like, oh, my character's a master of everything, it's actually very enjoyable to find other people who are experts in certain subjects. So, why would you be like, let's say you're a mercenary. Well, why would anyone else ever play, like, let's say a librarian if your mercenary is somehow a master of navigating the library? You can go to these areas and search out people who have those skills and maybe create a unique and fun situation. You will have a lot more fun and be beloved as a role player if you make other people feel cool and feel meaningful. If you try to do everything on your own, you're just kind of there. Red flags. Here are red flags that are pretty common in roleplay that you might want to know. Red flags. Someone demanding your time, demanding you not RP on other characters, demanding you not RP with other characters. This is a red flag as they're trying to control you. People demanding you do extra things like roll extra or beat higher rolls just to fight their normal character. Again, they're probably power tripping, not worth your time. If you get swarmed all of a sudden by a person's friend so that they win an encounter, they're just using their friends as an artificial way to win a fight. Unless you're, again, trying to be like a villain in a public space, this shouldn't happen. If you're 1v1ing someone in the middle of nowhere, or it's established as a 1v1, you shouldn't just randomly be swarmed by 20 of their guildmates, let's be honest. That's just bullshit, so don't fall for it. Characters who downplay their failures but upplay all their successes, especially in combat, this is a red flag. So for example, if they get hit and they're like, oh, I shake off this petty blow, even though technically you rolled well. Or when they get a hit on you, they try to describe it as bone breaking. These people are trying to be chumps. Don't fall for it. Next. Anyone trying to force adult themes on you is a red flag. So ERP, torture, murder, other things. This is not appropriate. They should not try to force this on you. Any guard role players who throw you into a cell and then give you no further role play. Red flag because they're not really trying to give you an experience. It's kind of boring like that. Generally, if you do get thrown into prison because you're being a menace out in the city, maybe be reasonable and understand that, like, you jumping right out and saying, oh, well, these guards suck is kind of diminishing their RP. Like, try to be reasonable. If you're being a criminal, like, maybe give it a second because, yeah, it makes sense you'd be locked up for a little bit. You can, of course, escape or have something go on, but if you're constantly doing that, people are eventually going to lose faith in you and they're going to feel like you're not a serious role player. Next, anyone who mixes OOC and IC, so they start acting like you're dating in real life because you're dating in character, or they start demanding your time or getting weird, that's a problem. Like, they shouldn't be doing that. They will, of course, probably become a friend of yours because when you roleplay with someone, that's just natural. You're going to become closer. You're going to get to know them. Like, obviously, you're probably going to like them as a person, but it is important to understand that most people are not looking at an RP relationship as an out of character real life one. And some people get that confused and they get weird about it. Don't be one of those people. It can lead to a relationship eventually, but that actually takes work. It's not just guaranteed, so don't assume that. Next, anyone who threatens you with self-harm or tries to guilt trip you like, oh, I won't roleplay this character anymore if you don't do this, that's going to be a bad time. Even if you're trying to be nice. I've had this experience before. Trying to be kind to people who try to do this kind of low-key like guilt trip or, an overt like, ugh, like I just feel so depressed. You're gonna end up being miserable dealing with these people. Yes, you can feel bad for them, but don't let them take over your story because it's not worth it. Someone who tries to use rank to get something out of you and who gets mad if you turn them down. So for example, let's say you join a guild and the leader's like, you have to do this for me, give me like all this stuff or whatever. Don't fall for this, guys. Again, it's an obvious scam. Don't let people make you into like, a fool. If they're trying to get stuff out of you, be very on guard with it. It can make sense in some things, like if you're joining like, you know, a military group and there's someone being a drill sergeant with you and they're like RP, like, you know, giving you grief and stuff, sure. But if they start asking for favors, if they start asking your character to be like excessively close with theirs, then obviously there's something messed up going on there. Next red flag, male worgen. Next red flag. Oh, I'm just kidding. But male worgen by themselves aren't bad. They do have a history of being ERP hounds. There's a lot of people who do things like pack role play, which is messed up, and male worgen unfortunately draw that a lot. Realistically, they're not really bad, but it's just kind of funny to make a joke about. But still, be on guard. Super tall characters. Now these are a red flag where it doesn't have to be bad. Some people do this well. The reason why it sometimes is a red flag though is some people try to use this as another reason their character is super strong. They're like, oh, my character is like 9 feet tall, so naturally they're way stronger and they're way better at fighting, and they try to apply all these things that are like real world things. Like obviously you wouldn't want to fight someone who's like 9 foot if you're like average height in real life. But again, it's only a red flag if they're trying to use it for the power purposes. If they're just being like a big character because they like having a slightly different looking model, or they're doing like a design that really works with that, that can be kind of cool. It's just important to keep it balanced, right? So if people are trying to use that for an advantage, it's probably an issue. Love bombing. People will love bomb in RP. Be aware of this. If someone makes everything about you and they're not paying attention to other people, that's a red flag. No space to do your own thing. If someone's not giving you space and they're just bombarding you and showing up at every event you're at, even if it makes no sense, then again, they're probably doing this love bombing. They're just being weird. Probably a red flag. ERP. ERP by itself is not a red flag, but it does convey some issues, right? So if someone's only after that, that's a problem. You can tell their character is probably not interested in developing a story or a long-term thing with you. That could be a problem. Most people aren't Puritans, and a lot of the people who ardently say, oh, ERP bad, you can find them doing ERP at some point or another. The thing is there is tasteful versions of this, and then there are just gaudy and horny players whose only goal is to be horny. There's a reason why sometimes I do feel like Stormwind is a dating sim, because some people treat it as such, and it can feel very fake. Basically, any coercion is bad in roleplay, so just keep that in mind. Any power dynamic exploits, bad, etc. Emotes that imply no agency on your part are a red flag. And yeah, that's the red flags. Add-ons and use. One add-on you might like is Listener. I'm using that right now here. Listener has 2 main windows, a main and a snooper window. I use both. Snooper lets you click on somebody and see what they've said. So I've seen, for example, this character. I've seen them say a few things and I can see the timestamps. 5 minutes ago they said, maybe then I'll try it out. 2 minutes after they said mean and evil, whatever. I can see the things that they've said, and I can click on these various characters and hover over them and see what they've done. This is very good for events where things get crowded. Not necessary when you're in a smaller thing, but this way you can keep track of things everyone has said and when. The listener window itself lets you click on things as they occur, so you can kind of check them off as you go through, and you can tell what you read and what you should not. It lists all the characters all in one window. So it can be nice to have that customizable and have bigger text so you can actually read the thing. Listener, and by extension, it's, you know, the other little part, Snooper, is excessively useful. Like, I think it's vital. I would recommend getting it. Total RP is almost mandatory. Total RP is what opens these sorts of windows. Total RP allows you to list out your characteristics. It's very easy to edit, very self-explanatory. If you want advice on how to fill out a TRP, you can ask for it. I could do a video on that itself. You can have art links, so you can have like artwork of your character. You can make customizations to make it look pretty, although when you're writing it out, it looks like, you know, a bunch of like commands and basic text. But you can get a nice looking TRP. Like I have a pretty decent looking one, I would say. I have like RP hooks in here. I have some basic skills my character has, etc. Miscellaneous tab of it gives you some at a glance things, which people will, when they hover over you, they see these little commands and they can see what you think is most important for them to know very quickly. Useful information is also put here, like some OOC information, some IC information. All this can be pretty handy, and you get to create and customize all these things, their icons and more. TRP also allows you, if you do TRP extended, which I recommend, TRP extended, it gives you the ability to make items, which are put in a special RP bag that exists in its own space. These items can do some pretty fun things. For example, I have made one, which is an action figure, a Malfurion action figure, which plays a voice line, famous "Where are you, Tyrande" line. And then it also opens a little mini cutscene with dialogue I wrote. It uses a model I chose, and I can make choices in it. It's kind of basic, but it tells you some things. It plays some music, and it's kind of cool. You could write entire books. I have a business card here, which has my character's, terms of service on it when you open it. And the business card itself just tells you some basics about my character. I've also written some, steamy steamy romance novel stuff, like WoW itself has, where I made like a little short story and like people can read it. I can play music, and all this text is mine, so someone can be handed that. You can make items like this one that I made too, which is called Beast Energy Tea, which is just a stupid monster energy joke, which gives you like a little buff that other people can see when they have TRP, play some music and has some sound effects. It could even do other little things. TRP Extended has a lot of potential. It can be very fun, but again, it's not mandatory. It's more of like a side thing. Next, Elephant. Elephant is an add-on which allows you to save a lot more text than you normally would, so it won't just erase it. This is useful, particularly for people who want to copy down their RP stories and save them somewhere later. So you might go into whatever chat you're using. You might go into copy, and then it lets you select text, copy it, and paste it over somewhere. And this can be done so you can save events. And this is from an older event. It actually stored all of this, which is actually pretty cool. And you can also write on this if you want to. But it's good because you might be able to save some things and it keeps it stored. So yeah, good for people who want to copy down their RP and keep things in archives. I know there's a few people like that. Also good for you if you forget things and you want to look back and be like, oh, what did this person say? It's handy. Emote Splitter, an add-on which allows you to basically, when you write, it means that you won't be stopped at the max characters for a paragraph. You can keep writing and writing and writing. It makes multi-paragraph posting a lot easier, more seamless, and it means you don't have to like pause as you're in the middle of writing something to hit enter, have it paste, and then keep writing. It's a lot more efficient because when you post everything at once, people know it all belongs together. So Emote Splitter, highly recommended. Musician's a pretty fun add-on, a lot more niche. Oh, let me move this TRP extended over. A lot more niche. What it does is it allows you to play music for other people. Now, when you combine this with certain toys, like a harp, which lets you just kind of look like you're playing a harp, you can play music and other people can hear it if they have musicians. So for example, I could play the Moogle theme song from Final Fantasy, or I could play Beyond the Sea. Now, these things are obviously going to be using MIDI formats. You have to use the website that comes with the musician, but it's not too hard once you get it going. And it can be a lot of fun because you can kind of do your bard fantasy, play some background sound. It's kind of cool. Fun for little events and fun for adding a little extra, flavor to your character. Cross RP. This is an add-on which makes cross-faction RP a little bit easier. You can whisper people. It reminds you to use an in-game item called the Elixir of Tongues, which lets you understand the opposite faction for an hour. All these things are pretty handy. Finally, there's an add-on called Misspelled. Misspelled is, well, as it sounds, it puts a spell check in the game. So if I wrote Fits, or let's write Thims, something like that, it will try to recommend something like Thins or Trims or this. It will try to give you some ideas. It'll highlight things. Very handy for those of you who don't want to be constantly opening up the dictionary. Now, useful in-game items. Elixir of Tongues, a very handy item. It allows you to understand cross-faction RP. Inky Black Potion gives you mood lighting, can make it look like night. This only applies to you, but it can be kind of nice to have a little bit more immersion. And it's also cool to see some lighting effects. Toys. I recommend any seating toys because seats let you, set up an area. Any objects you can place down that others can see can create the illusion of something being there that wasn't before. So you can kind of create like a spot. You can make it look like there's a smithy set up. And then there's some toys like Blingtron's Design Circuit, which puts you in a activation state where it looks like you're doing something. Now this is good because you can run around and look like you're actually working on something. Handy for when you're trying to do something in RP and just want to add a little bit more visual flair, so you're not just standing there twiddling your thumbs or just standing there stock still. Dark Moon Seesaw. If you want to shrink yourself down, the Dark Moon Seesaw is pretty handy. It makes you very tiny, which is good for, like, let's say, you know, like child characters or something like that. And if you combine the Seesaw with Dark Moon Firewater, which is a item which makes you a little taller, you will be a little shorter than average, but not so many that you look like a kid. So you can create ways to kind of adjust your height, because Blizzard doesn't let us just naturally do that, which is a shame. Next, making a character. Let's do this quickly because we are bordering on 45. We are at 45 minutes. I want to go fast. Making a character. Making a character is easy. You go under your profiles. You can create a new profile in TRP. You start filling out your basic characteristics, so your title, your first name, your last name, a full title, your race, your age. Everything here is listed out, and you can add more fields. So here I've put things like my nickname, my motto, you know, my birthday, what I like, what I dislike. Those are things that I just made up myself, my own little things there. Pronouns are good because they get shown. Now I know some people are gonna be like, oh, pronouns. Well, one, like, I don't really care about your politics on it, but it's just handy too, like, because that way when you click on someone, you know what they're trying to present as. Because there are people who use female models, but they're meant to be male. There's people who use male models, but they're meant to be female. It prevents confusion. So just for the sake of that, and just to avoid any political nonsense, just respect it. It's just easier. Personality traits. You can add these little bars to show where your character falls on a general list. Obviously, people won't know this just by looking at you, but it can be handy for them to understand. The About tab is where you tend to put a lot of, like, you know, different terms about your background. It's more the lengthy stuff and some of the personal stuff. Most people aren't going to read it. Try to put your important stuff at the top, like your appearance and your RP hooks, and maybe some art. The Miscellaneous tab has your at-a-glance slot. Those are very important because, again, those show up whenever someone targets you. They're going to be able to see your at-a-glance first, as well as some basic info that's here. Your currently, your other information. Those are the things people are going to see first. And other information, I advise keeping it friendly and getting the main point across. Let's take a look at someone else's. Here, when I click on this person, you see I can see their at-a-glance on my list here. I can see the important things. Oh, they have a rod and blade. Oh, they're a bookworm. Oh, they're a high magus. I can see this information quickly, and then if I want to, I can look into more things about them. Here I can see that they're LGBTQIA friendly. They're very shy, so they probably won't walk up. And then they have a lot of years of experience. So for this person, I probably want to RP with them because, I mean, they sound kind of fun. And, you know, if I see a shy character, I like to give them a chance. I see a lot of, like, you know, green flags here. I think there's some cool stuff. So I'd probably walk up to that person and start chatting with them because I'm a little bit more social. Okay, role-playing process with an example. Role-playing is pretty easy. Let's open up some videos here and let's look at some things that can happen because I have some little footage. Here's me in an event. Now, when I'm role-playing, you'll see there's a lot of dialogue going on. I tend to have some stuff open. I can see what everyone's initially saying, and I can highlight them with my snooper tab and keep track, even though a lot of stuff is going on. You don't have to interact with every single person that's in an event. But what you can do is try to respect and pay attention to what's going on. If someone talks to you, you know, for example, someone here was saying like, oh, you know, you wrote down a lovely story, Mana. You know, and she has like a nice long post. I can see when she posted it within the time slots. It's not too hard to keep track of, even though there's a lot of people involved. As I go through this event, there's a lot of things that go on. Now, this was a somewhat story-told event, and it was a really fun time. It was actually the aftermath of an event, but not so important there. But everyone here kind of knew each other loosely, and so they're working together. Pretty cool thing. Now, sometimes you'll have public events. Here's me at a Gilnean concert. Now, this event was interesting in that they had music. You had to sit in a certain part of the rows, but everyone here was invited. This was an established server event. There were some like messages about it going on, and it was a pretty cool turnout. And during it, they actually had music. So I'm gonna play this a little louder once I get to the right section. Actually, I think I have a better video for this one. Here you go. So here you can hear and you can see the person putting dialogue in that goes up with a song. They're using a site, a watch together, in order to facilitate this. Really cool. However, obviously, the point here was that you weren't really sitting here role-playing a ton. There were some people who would clap. There's people who would, you know, if they asked you to dance a little bit, they might have you do that and like jump up a little bit. But the main point of this event was to experience something, and then there was a little intermission where people could hang out and talk. But it was something your character got to experience. You might have events like this sometimes. Sometimes those events do give you time to talk, like what's going on here. So this is the kind of intermission phase where, you know, people were chatting outside in the rain. They were talking about what was going on. People took their umbrellas out. It was kind of nice. There was a lot of stuff going on. Now, when you're engaging in DM'd events, it tends to be like this, where there are things that are marked off, like as special characters. You can see those raid markers. It's a little slower. There's someone who's DMing. They might denotate it with DM and say like, oh, upon reaching the Mogul Ruins in the open, the group would notice a party of 5 Shadowpan children. These types of things are pretty standard, and you got to take your time, react, put it in raid chat so everyone can read it. And this is more of like a dungeon mastered event. These types of things take a little longer. You might move yourself around slowly. You know, you make your decisions. And just play it by ear. Try not to take too many actions at once, because you want to make sure you respect the fact that other people are there with you. For random roleplay, it's pretty simple. You wander around, and you can, if you're really social, you can pretty much just walk up to anybody. It's really not that hard to do that. In fact, I would say that it's pretty simple. There tends to be a lot of people that are just waiting for you to roleplay. So if you're looking for roleplay, it's as simple as walking up and doing it. Not too bad. Now, one thing that happened to me was I was walking around and I was just kind of looking for something that'd be kind of fun to show. And randomly, I came across some people who were standing together, and I was wondering what was going on. And this guy just happened to catch it from the side of my eye, a wine tasting going on. So I was like, oh, you know what? Cool. You can make a little joke about it. So one thing what I said was here was like, wine tasting out here, interesting spot, but I figured I got nothing much to lose. And I said, and then I added, I ain't going to get robbed or get mugged, am I? Just to add a little humor, be a little bit funny. And, you know, they kind of waved me on. I went down there, people welcomed me, and soon I was taking part in a whole little wine tasting that was going on. Now, they didn't have like the most like, you know, crazy setup, but it was a cute little idea. I met some people, I got to chat a little bit. You know, multiple things were going on. Was it the best roleplay in the world? No, but it was enjoyable. It was a smart little thing, and it was like a little mini event, and these things can just happen. Make sure when you're doing little events like this, though, that you are paying attention to who you're looking at. So for example, I do want to click on someone's character, and I want to know, first of all, are they out of character, in character? Here you can see in red OOC. In fact, if you look over me right now, you can see in red OOC. So people know that I'm not in character. Now I can fix that quickly. Click a little button on my TRP list right over here, and I can go in character. These main buttons here are, you know, just basic to, like, they're basic things that you can hover over and they will tell you what they do. TRP is very self-explanatory. But I want to know like what a character is. So I might wait for their TRP to load, and then I'll look at what they have. Like this person's OOC, but they do Dream Puffs and Divine Delights. It looks like they are a salesperson. Yep, they have a menu. So, and look, they're currently even telling them they're out of character in AFK. So interesting. You can kind of see like, okay, I shouldn't approach this person. If you look at their glances, if you look at their tabs, like here's a person that's a friend of mine. I can look at their glances, I can look at their tabs, and I can know some things about them. Like this person has some, you know, this person's even telling you keep IC and OOC notes like separate. They tell you that they're not here to date people. They're here that they're like, you know, they're probably frustrated about some things. They tell you this character has trust issues. They tell you that this character has gloves on for some reason. Like all these things can matter, and they're what the person really wants you to see first. So just keep that kind of thing in mind. For advanced tips, I recommend you try to be active and mobile with your role play. If something starts to get stale, try to shake it up. Try to move it out. Try to move it to a different section. Try not to be somebody who just sits there in one spot or only does the same thing over and over again. You're going to bore yourself doing that. Even as a non-socialite, you can do this. Just give people something to work with. Give them an emote once in a while. Like sit near them or walk near them and be like, oh, I'm reading this book. And you don't have to talk to them, but say like, you know, oh, you know, Mana pulls out a book on machinery. And, you know, if I happen to be standing near a gnome, maybe the gnome will comment. You can goad people into a little bit of commentary and try to create a situation where they might talk to you first, even if you technically emoted first. Now, remember, there are lots of things that are flavor. There are lots of things that are fun in the game. Be free to make stuff up. Try to have fun. And really, that's the main idea. Just try to have fun, and I think you're going to have a good time. I think this covers pretty much everything. It did take me almost an hour instead of 30 minutes. Sorry about that, but I think I cut down the time a little bit more. You know, I shaved some time off. If you guys would like more examples of events, if you want to know how to actually roleplay a character, if you want to see me make one in roleplay, I could do something like that. But I believe this covers pretty much everything you would want to see. It gives you an idea of what some of the add-ons are like, and I think this will hopefully help some of you out. So go out there, have fun, enjoy your roleplay. Hopefully this gives you some ideas, some things to look out for, and gives you a nice scope as to what to expect. All right, that's all. Take care, guys.